everybody. Because the Wednesday section only meets once a week, and I want everybody to be well prepared for this coming Wednesday's quiz, I wanted to walk through last Wednesday's quiz and show you a couple of things that might also help. So first, I took last Wednesday's quiz and I put it up on Prairie Learn. So if you look here under assessments, you should see practice quiz V2 here. So if we open the practice quiz V2 and open the workspace, what you will see is the same questions that were on Wednesday's quiz. You will notice that there were two different versions of the question. So both of those are here, and you have the ability to uncomment the code, run through it with the debugger, whatever it is that will help you be prepared for this coming Wednesday. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my iPad here, and I'm going to step through solving this problem as if it were in front of me as a quiz. So what you can see here is that we have x equals 9 and y equals 21, and we'll start right here with that first print statement, which is really about calling function 1. Now, because x and y are both numbers, I'm going to take a little bit of a shortcut here. If you've studied references or passed by reference before, you might notice I'm taking a shortcut, otherwise it doesn't really matter. So we want to figure out what the return value of function 1 is. So we have x equals 9 and y equals 21. So we're about to use those values. So we can treat this as if we have a 21 instead of the y and a 9 instead of the x. Now, here is the most important thing about solving this particular problem. And I think this is probably the most common mistake I saw as I was grading the quizzes. So remember that the variables inside of a function, like the y and x in function 1 up here, are completely separate from the y and x in the global space here. Every function has its own namespace. So variables inside of one function are completely different from the variables inside of another function. Just like the Andrew that lives in my house is a separate person from the Andrew that lives in the neighbor's house. They have the same name, but they live in different spaces and refer to different people, or in this case, different variables. So when we call function 1, remember, parameters are passed by position. So this 21 gets placed into the x, and the 9 is placed into the y. It doesn't matter that they're both called x and y. There's no matching by names in this case. It's all by position. So that means the x is a 21 and the y is a 9. So this line of code right here is 21 minus 2 times 9, or 21 minus 18, is equal to 3. So that means the first line will simply print 3. Now for the second problem, where we're calling both function 2 and function 1, the first thing that has to happen is we have to evaluate the middle value, or the call to function 1, which we know is 3. We just figured that out. So that value is what's passed to function 2. So that means function 2 is simply 3 squared plus 4, which is 13. So the answer to the second one is 13. And now for the third one, this third line, again, we work from the middle out. So the first piece here is x plus 200, and the x here is, of course, the x in the global space. So that would be 209. We have to evaluate function 2 here. So we have to evaluate function 2 of 9. So if we put a 9 in here, we get 9 squared plus 4, which is 85. So now I'm going to erase all of this. Hang on one second. So as before, we're passing these values by position. So the first parameter has a value of 209. So the first parameter x is 209. The second parameter y is 85. So we have 209 minus 2 times 85. 209 minus 170, which is 39. So the answers to this quiz are 3, 13, and 39. So let me do the same thing for the other version of the quiz. I'll go through this version a little bit quicker because all the same principles apply. Again, we have x and y here in the global space, and we also have x and y in the namespace for function 1 and x in the namespace for function 2. The first problem is to evaluate function 1 of yx. So y is 21, x is 9. So we pass by position. That 21 becomes our first parameter in function 1. The 9 becomes the second. So in this case, we have 21 minus 3 times 9, or 21 minus 27, which is negative 6. Again, with the second one, we have to work from the inside out. So the first thing we have to do is evaluate the inside, which we just did. We already know that that is negative 6. So that negative 6 is what is the x in function 2. So negative 6 squared minus 4. Negative 6 squared is positive 36. So I did see that arithmetic mistake a few times. Anyway, 36 minus 4 is 32. So the answer to the second line is 32. And now for the third line, we have x plus 250, which is 259. And then notice over here, we have two parts to do. We have to figure out function 2 of 9. So let me clear this out to do that. So function 2 of 9 would be 9 squared minus 4, which is 81 minus 4 is 77. So I have 77 plus 3, which is 80. So again, let me erase all of this extra stuff. If we go by position again, the first parameter here, 259, goes into x. The second parameter here, which is 80, goes into y. So now we have 259 minus 3 times 80, which is 259 minus 240, or 19 for the third line. All right, so like I said, if we flip back here to the Prairie Learn, you can do things like uncomment those print lines when you're ready to check your answer. You can run that block. You'll see the answers there. You can also turn on the debugger. So if I set a breakpoint here and start running through this code, I can see up in the right here that x is 9 and y is 21. And I can step into, notice the arrow pointing straight down, I can step into that function, and I can see here now that the x is 21 and the y is 9, so I can see how those parameters were passed and make sure I get those values lined up in order. And then I can step through and see the negative 6 and so on. All right, so hopefully if you had trouble with that first quiz, following the answers here, you can see where those answers came from. You can pretty easily write your own practice problems if you want to. The structure of the quiz will be the same, so you could even write your own practice problems, write a couple of functions with a few parameters and some arithmetic in it. Try to figure it out by hand and then check it by running the code. As always, I plan to be downtown by 2:30 on Monday, so feel free to stop by if there's anything else I can help clarify for you. Oh, and I should mention that there will be a new question on the quiz. We'll try to do a new question every week. And if you go to the code tracing practice quiz here and open the workspace, the idea will be similar to the functions, but this time the functions will have if statements in them. So you can see here from these kinds of problems, we'll be making sure that you can trace code with ands and ors in it, that you'll know the difference between if statements and if else statements, which I don't have an if else right here. And also notice the difference between an if statement with a return in it and an if statement that just sets a variable that gets returned at the end. So you can see a couple of the, I'll call them tricks that I'll put into the problem. You're also welcome to stop by and ask more questions about that in the office if I can help with that too. All right. I will see you guys in a couple of days.